Good morning and welcome to the Frontline New Daily News Show. We have a plethora of guests for you today. We very simply can be found on Patreon at The Real Truth 502. You can also find us at the Frontline Army on Rumble, or sign up for our uncensored newsletter, given what's happened to Tucker Carlson and various other journalists, and we'll come to that a bit later on. Please go and subscribe to our free newsletter. That will tell you all about the long videos and everything that's going on. We're going to get started. I'm going to introduce everybody. We are joined by our regular panel, the wonderful Danny Roscoe. We are joined by James Rossi, who are a regular panelist. We have Daewoo, who's come to join us on terms of the Pakistan situation and what's happening with Imran Khan, and Mark Bishop, who is a member of the public who'd also like to have his say. And we think that that's absolutely right, and people should do that. We're going to start, gentlemen, with Navalny. Now, we're going to go through a couple of things here, and then we're going to go around the room and talk about everything there. The very first thing we're going to do, gentlemen, is we are going to have a little look at a video here. As we all know, Navalny is the so-called opposition leader who died in jail. So let's have a look at this video first.
We would expand our activities, of course, with a little money. If somebody would spend, I don't know, $10–20 million a year on supporting this, we would see quite different picture. And this is, not a big amounts of money for people who have billions at stake in this game.
Yeah.
So that's the message that I'm trying to project in my fundraising effort and talking to people in business communities.
Yeah.
You need to play on different chessboards. Mass products, civil initiatives, propaganda, establishing contacts with the elite and explaining to them that we are reasonable people and we're not going to demolish everything and take away their assets, things like that. So we'll see what comes out of that. So this broadly describes what I do.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, not a small job.
So, gentlemen, let's go through this. That is Navalny's aide, and his name is Vladimir Ashkarov. He wants to start wanted to start a color revolution using Navalny. Now, let's go through a few things that have been out in the media. We've had Justin Trudeau saying that Putin is a monster because of this guy's death in prison. This is the same guy who we exposed as having a Nazi in the Canadian Parliament. If you remember, we broke that story. Sunak saying that he has incredible courage. Blinken met with his wife, and we've also had various others coming out and speaking on it. Now, when Sunak says incredible courage, we have to remember that this guy is a white nationalist. He's vehemently anti-immigration, so much so he's been responsible for skinhead marches and, shall we say, far-right lunatics going out into the world. Blinken also met with his wife. You would have seen her at the Munich conference. He's not the only person who's met with his wife because she's had a Russian billionaire dissident, Eugene Chavarenko, who's been her boyfriend for the last couple of months. So much for trotting her out at the Munich conference. We also have to talk about, do we not, the nonsense of Novichok. So we have something here. I have an email from one of the chief scientists. Used to previously work at Porton Down, and he says that in the early 80s, the Russians used Novichok, realized it was so bad and so uncontrollable that they stopped using it. The Germans then got samples of Novichok, several NATO countries, including Germany, United States, Great Britain, Czechoslovakia, and Sweden, for the purpose of research and development of antidotes. Thus, since the early 1990s, the United States has filed nearly 140 patents on chemical weapons of this type. In fact, in 1998, the American Chemical Weapons Laboratory in Edgewood synthesized Novichok, and it's also been found in various labs in Ukraine. we also have to point out that the preliminary cause of death is blood clotting, and that this gentleman was triple jabbed. Does that sound more likely that it might be an excess death rather than it might be something where they've used Novichok or some sort of poison? It's clearly a narrative being pushed by the West, and it's completely not true. Danny, we'll come to you first. Your thoughts on this?
Well, it's as much the same as the same. It probably is the clock shot that's done him. But you know, the anti-Putin propaganda that's been pushed against this in the UK, against, as you say, a white nationalist, somebody who I wouldn't say is an opposition when he only can secure 2% of the Russian public vote. But we've got to look at Ukraine, because Ukraine is also the ones who like to silence political opponents like Tymoshenko and Viktor Medvedev, or whatever, whoever he is, a politician and the former president. So yeah, if we're going to start talking about who's getting silenced and who's getting, you know, killed in these types of ways, then we've got to look at Ukraine at the same time. But because Ukraine is the media darling and Zelensky can do nothing wrong at the moment, yeah, they're just going to keep pushing this propaganda. And it's interesting that MI5 is, you know, talking to people about this color revolution, because right about this time now, it's at a good shot to have a great revolution because of our political, where we are politically. So it'll be a good way of them doing it, destabilizing the country without no one really looking into it.
Yeah, absolutely. James, your thoughts on this?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. The West have got a habit of not only interfering in other people's business when it suits them and it suits their needs, but they've got a habit of making people disappear who become too much of a nuisance, shall we say? So I'm not really shocked on it at all. But yeah, Zelensky and Ukraine. I do believe he was recently, I think yesterday or this morning, in Munich as well, giving a conference as well to the UN.
What a surprise. Daewoo, I'm going to come to you on this. This seems rather crazy, doesn't it? The outrage on this, given that Assange and Gonzalo Lira and nobody lifts a finger.
Yeah, so basically, my view on this is very, very simple. I think we have a very, very devious and very, very corrupt government, not just in Britain, but across the EU and the West. And it proved that dishonesty when they banned RT News. They simply didn't want us to hear what the other side had to hear. And if there's such awful people doing such awful things, why can't we know about it? Because they don't want us to get a balanced view and think for ourselves. And they have a long history, like the other gentleman said, you know, of manipulating news and regime change and so on. And quite simply, I do not believe anything our government says. I take it all with a pinch of salt. I think the people in this country are being drip-fed propaganda. It's highly dishonest. And in many years to come, people will write books about this and they will look at us and say, wow, we were this conned by so few people. And yeah, so I have a healthy distrust of anything I hear from these lots.
Yeah, no worries at all. So let's ask our regular man in the street, Mark Bishop, what are your thoughts, buddy? What are you think?
Morning.
It's always nice to hear. Good morning and welcome to the show. We brought you on as a member of the public, and everybody should have their say when it comes to the news. What are your thoughts, Mark?
I mean, I don't really know a great deal about the story, but when I hear Western leaders kind of coordinating a message, I immediately am suspicious, you know. And my sense is that, you know, it's like, don't look at us, look at them. You know, it's quite a common tactic. You know, if you've got an issue abroad, we can take the heat off our own, usually the economy, you know. So I think that's my kind of issue.
Fantastic. We having looked at that, and of course we'll keep trailing that, we now need to have a look, I think, at Israel. And we need to have a look. First of all, we've got 3 little videos for you. We're going to play them one after the other. And then I'd like your thoughts on that, gentlemen. We'll go round the houses on that afterwards. Here we go, the first one coming up.
يا الله طيارة بتطخ يا الله يا الله تعال ولا إشي ولا إشي اقعدي هنا ولا إشي ولا إشي. يا الله 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 يا رب يا الله. تخافيش يا بابا تخافيش يا روحتي تخافيش حبيبتي.
So there's terrified children. Let's have a little look at another one that is coming out, and this is quite bizarre. A lady has gone out, left her children indoors because she doesn't want them out on the street, and this is what we've got.
أم الأولاد كانت مخلية الأولاد في البيت وهي نازلة تشتري بس كم من غرض يعني من السوق. كمية جنود واقفين على باب البيت فما أعطوها سابق إنذار. أنا كنت معدي فلقيت أنا باب العمارة لقيته مسكر بالإلحام. الأم تفاجأت إنه في أولادها فوق في العمارة وتسكر عليهم. لما أجوا الإسرائيليين يعني هم شو بيحكوا هذا باب البيت انفتح بس من سنة ونص. رغم هيك احنا ساكنين في البيت حوالي صار لنا 11-12 سنة وداخلين طالعين احنا من قدامهم. ضغطوا عليهم اهل الشارع وضغطوا عليهم الصحافة وضغطوا عليهم من اكثر من جهة. ما حد بيتنازل عن ارضه ولا حد بيتنازل عن بيته.
So that's that one. This next one, forgive me, gentlemen, is quite harrowing. This is a thing we soldiers call, or many people call it PTSD, or they call it battle fatigue. Is a very nice name for it now. It's basically shell shock. And this is what happens to people when they're in a war situation. Now, it's bad enough soldiers coming back with all this trauma. And if you go and look at some of the First World War shell shock people, they dress it up in nice language. Now, it's got its own 4 letters. But these sort of things, they never leave you and they never go away. And this is a little harrowing, as you will probably imagine.
كنت أطلع
وين كنت؟
كنت أطلع
هيك طلعت. خليك نايم.
So there's a child that is probably never going to want to be left alone ever again. We're going to come to Daewoo first on this, and then James, and then Danny, and then Mark. Your thoughts on this, Daewoo?
I could talk literally for hours about Palestine. It's such a complex and in-depth, passionate subject. But every day I literally want to cry. I open my Instagram and other social media, and every day I'm literally holding back the sobs, holding back the tears. I'm absolutely horrified, devastated, disgusted. And I think what's upset me and most people is the quiet acceptance that now people have. People have become accustomed to it almost, and they just accept it. And that's one thing that I find very, very hard to understand. And you know, it looks like the Gazans will be ethnically cleansed and pushed into the Sinai desert, something they all denied, but it looks like it's happening. And Egypt is building a buffer wall. But the whole, as I say, quiet acceptance, especially by a lot of Muslim nations and Muslim leaders, actually, not so much the nations, but the leaders like Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. I'm really very, very angry. Yeah, it's a very, very difficult time for all of us, and we feel impotent, and we're doing as much as we can, but it's very, very draining emotionally for all of us watching this absolute horrible genocide going on. Yeah, it's very, very hard for all of us to witness this.
Yeah, James, there can be no excuse for this, can there? Terrifying children in such a way. These are not terrorists, are they?
No, they're not. I mean, Israel will still come out with the usual rhetoric. We have the right to defend ourselves, although they haven't come out with it as much lately, because I know for a fact they must be thinking it's wearing thin, which it is. But we've got 28,775 dead, of which at least a third of them are children or more. We've got wounded 68,552. And the initial Hamas attack, let's not forget, was 1,139. But of that attack, at least a third were killed by Israeli attack helicopter gunships and Israeli tanks. So they actually killed, you know, a large proportion of their own people. What happened on October the 7th, right, although was wrong and wasn't right and shouldn't have happened, because no civilian should be killed, does not condone in any way what's going on. I said from day one that this is going to be what's going to happen. They're going to clear northern Gaza, they're going to clear southern Gaza, and it's going to be ethnic cleansing. And of course, you know, I got a lot of backlash for that, doing my own personal video. But the truth's in the pudding. I was bang on the money. This is what's happening. Egypt is complicit in this as well, because they wouldn't be building a buffer wall if they weren't preparing in the Sinai to put the Palestinians. So they know full well the Palestinians are going to go there. They know, and you know, you would think that Egypt would be putting pressure on Israel in some way, whether it's diplomatic or militarily, including the Arab leaders. I know this, the ICJ's, South Africa's asked the ICJ yesterday if they would, you know, add to the ICJ an immediate ceasefire and a stop to hostilities because of Rafah. The ICJ has refused, the UN have refused. The only thing we're getting out of some of the EU and EU leaders, sorry, and Western leaders and NATO, sorry, is we'd like a temporary ceasefire, please, Mr. Netanyahu, which of course is not going to happen. It's ridiculous, and the UN, sorry, I'm going on a bit, but the UN and NATO need to hang their heads in shame. They've been absolutely abysmal and absolutely useless and complicit in what's happening by not taking the appropriate action.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny, we managed to obtain from our friends, obviously in America, that they've given the Israelis till March the 10th to get this done. This is why they don't seem to be stopping or putting a halt to this right away. What are your thoughts on what's happening at the moment in Gaza, Dan?
Well, I'm always going to be an unpopular conversation on this. A war's bad on any front. We talk about, you know, geopolitics a lot, but until there's a solution, then it's always going to happen. This cycle is always going to happen, you know, and this is where we as the West, we shouldn't be putting any type of military equipment, any type of military personnel into there. That we need to be sorting diplomatically. We need to be showing both sides and how to do it. But you know, my own opinion is both sides are complicit. Both sides are putting out the similar, some propaganda either way. And they can't be, when people are warring each other and they dislike each other so much, and there's so much to stake as well, because you've got to think about it. The Palestinians have got the whole of the Arab nation that could potentially come and attack Israel. So then that's Israel saying that they need USA and English and the West defense. But if people have that much hatred together, then there needs to be some tight diplomatic thing, like they did with Iran, of saying, look, you need to sort it out, and you know, we will help, but we will not put any military personnel there.
Okay, Mark, as our man in the street, buddy, what are your thoughts on the Palestine-Israel conflict?
You know, honestly, I mean, the videos we're seeing of these kids, you know, abandoned and shell-shocked, absolutely horrific is the word I want to use. It is an absolute horror we are witnessing at the moment in Gaza. And it's two thoughts. I forget who said it, but you know, for war to end, you have to have a dialogue and agreement always. And I don't see it. There's not what's going on, as your panelists have said. What is going on? There seems no effort by certainly the West to get some sort of resolution coming here. And again, you introduced the segment about the trauma. You know, I've a sort of a theory. You know, we're still getting over the Second World War. So you know, why is the West allowing this to continue? Because they are allowing it to continue. And it's just, I don't know. Well, the answer is to get around the table and get that agreement about Palestine. Until that happens, this is going to carry on. But this is the thing. When we look at all this stuff going on around the world and these wars, I start to think to myself, do the West just continually want to have war? And if so, why? You know, it's anyway. It's
the fact that over half the economy of the United States might be in producing military weapons might be some sort of an answer.
Exactly. You know, and again, who was Bernie Sanders? Yeah, I saw a clip of Bernie Sanders the other day, quite rightly saying, well, I forget, it was a huge amount of money the US is putting into Israel. He was just gently saying, well, with that comes a responsibility for us Americans to, you know, hold Israel to some kind of accountability, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Warren, can I just jump in quickly 2 seconds? I forgot to mention that you know, March the 10th, they've been given a deadline. That's funny how March the 17th, 3,000 IDF soldiers that are currently fighting out there with dual citizenship, will be returning to the UK. How do you feel knowing that you have people coming back to the UK that have committed war crimes and genocide, and they're going to be welcomed back into society by our government?
My greatest thing is, I don't care what flag you're under. I don't have a problem condemning Hamas for October the 7th. I don't have a problem with condemning what happened well before that for many, many years, you know, where they were killing people left, right and centre, and pretty much exacerbating the situation. And I don't have a problem with condemning loads and loads of atrocities that have happened since. It doesn't matter what flag you are standing under. When you start to genocide of people, civilians, men, women, children, you're a war criminal. And all those who took part in war crimes should be held accountable. Now, I do want to touch on one subject here, and I'm going to have my say. Very, very simply, we get told, oh, well, they should get rid of Hamas. Really, when we went and bombed, when we used weapons of mass destruction, you know, the WMD's nonsense in Iraq, when we killed Gaddafi in Libya, did the people rise up in Great Britain or America and overthrow their government because they're a bad government? No, of course we didn't. So we can't hold them to that standard whatsoever. You can hate Hamas all you like, but what you can't do is turn around to the people and say they've got to rise up and kill them, because very, very simply, and remove them, because we didn't when we did all sorts of things wrong in Afghanistan and Iraq, and are continuing to do it. So that's my take on that, gentlemen. We're going to move on now, because there was a specific reason we have David on, and we welcome him to the show. We're going to move on to Pakistan now. Very, very simply, I would like to say on the subject of Imran Khan and the recent elections and Imran Khan's jail, it is odd, is it not, that suddenly tons and tons of money was floating around Pakistan. Imran Khan refused America to use the corridor to launch drone strikes, and only a couple of days later he suddenly gets removed. My take on that is that America shouldn't be interfering or meddling in any way. We're going to hand over to Daewoo, who knows a lot more about it than most people. Daewoo, give us your take on this, buddy.
Okay, so the main problem in Pakistan is the real rulers of Pakistan is the Pakistani army, which is known as the Pak Army. They really started taking over in the 60s because of inept civilian government. And they were there as the guardians making sure the civilians didn't make a complete mess of it. However, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this almost parallel government became the government. And most civilian governments since, when it's not been martial law, have been really subject to military guidance, and they do as they're told by the military. So the problem in Pakistan is Pak Army. Now, if they were good patriots and good people, it wouldn't be so bad, but they're organized crime. Pak Army are involved in every disgusting, vile crime you can imagine. Honestly, prostitution, drug running, slavery, you name it, they are absolutely foul. They are the lowest of the low, hand on heart. And the police are no better. Pakistani police are absolutely disgusting. They're not police. They're basically a security force that controls the populace. They never really investigate crime. And so the whole apparatus is really, really rotten from the top down. And we had some hope when Imran Khan was elected. Now, he did have to get permission from the military. Could I please be prime minister? And at the time, the COAS, which is the army chief, Bajwa, allowed him, said, okay, we will allow you to be prime minister. And he made a lot of changes. He brought in free healthcare and he helped the poor and set up businesses, and there was 6% growth and everything was really good until he fell out with the US. Two things, as you rightly said, he was asked to allow the use of Pakistani territory to launch drone attacks on foreign countries. And he said no, because the last time we took part in a war on terror, which is in 2003, 80,000 Pakistanis died in a war that had nothing to do with them. And he said, no, please allow us to remain neutral. That really angered the Americans. Also, they wanted them to supply Ukraine with artillery shells. Pakistan has a huge military capacity, and they wanted that to be doing. Well, they really wanted to be, ultimately, they wanted to be allied with the Ukraine, but at the very least supply the Ukraine. And again, Imran Khan said, no, we're not going to take sides. We're not going to supply anyone. Please keep us out of this. And he had a long arranged meeting with Putin to buy some oil, cheap oil. And the day he went to Russia to buy this cheap oil is the same day that Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, Imran Khan had no knowledge of this, but his enemies jumped on this. The US jumped, grabbed it with both hands. So we got him now. He's an ally of Putin. He knew all about this. He's in with them. And they basically went to the establishment. That's what people call it. The establishment is the army of Pakistan, and said, basically, you need to get rid of Imran Khan. If you don't, we will punish you. And if you do, then you'll be rewarded. And I'm simplifying it. And
yeah, David, just let me jump in here. There was also going to be an oil refinery built in Pakistan with Saudi Arabian and China money, which would have been great for Pakistan's economy, wouldn't it?
That's right. So that's right. I'm just doing a summary for you because I know we are limited on time, and I could talk for hours about Pakistan. But basically, the chap called Donald Lu gave orders to, on behalf of Joe Biden, of course, to the Pakistani military to remove Imran Khan, and Bajwa did just that. He got all the political parties together. They held midnight sessions, and Imran Khan was unceremoniously thrown out of power within 2 days of the Americans ordering it. And of course, I'm going to have my little rant now, and it clearly shows they couldn't care less about democracy and human rights and all the other things they would use as pretexts to go to war. When it came to their own interest, they couldn't care less about replacing a democratically elected prime minister by a fascist and corrupt junta.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we ought to do, David, is have you on in an independent interview, and you can tell us even more about it and go in depth, which we'd very much like. I'm going to go to James, then Mark, then I'm going to go to Danny last of all to have his say on that, a sort of round robin. James Rossi, your thoughts on the Imran Khan situation in Pakistan?
Well, I think Imran Khan's a good man, and I think he cares about the people. And I think if he'd been allowed to stay in power, he would have done a lot of good for Pakistan. I think basically it proves that for all the rhetoric that America in particular puts out about democracy, free speech and free world and all the rest of it, it's absolute, hogwash, essentially, because here's a man who's going to really benefit that country and do well. He's not a warmonger, doesn't want to get involved in wars. So he's not actually doing anything negative. He's just saying to America, I'm not going to help you and support you in your wars because, every time we do, people die, in particular our people. And I agree with Imran Khan. Why should he support Ukraine, which is a fascist regime that's already committed atrocities itself against its own people in the Donbass region? So, it's really, really sad to see, because I think Pakistan could have been a great country under Imran Khan. I really believe that.
Lovely. Mark, I'm going to come to you, buddy. The man in the streets view. What's your thoughts on the Pakistan situation? Imran Khan fan or not?
Sorry, say the last question again.
Imran Khan fan or not?
I don't really know a great deal about this, to be honest. You know, I think I'm going to pass on this one. But you know, my initial sense from what's been said is, again, it just keeps coming back to this thing. It's Western involvement in foreign, you know, foreign subjects. You know, and what's the priority is always not what's happening in these countries. It's, you know, basically shoring up the US dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny, your thoughts on this, because I know you have views on this.
Yeah, well, you know, when has it become acceptable now? And we've been looking at it to say that we can start locking up political leaders, right? And that's the first thing about it, because it's happening a little bit too often, and there's not a lot of people talking about the, you know, the illegitimacy of it. But also, when I've just been talking, you know, IMRAN Khan is trying to make Pakistan an independent country and a powerhouse around there, and his connections to Putin. This is where I think the major bit of the, you know, keeping him in jail is there, because if he comes out, he will probably go closer towards Putin, and then there's another great nation in with the BRICS. And I think this is all that a lot of people, a lot of the Western people like the CIA, MI5 are just saying, you know, we're losing control of assets, and, you know, these people who we've been given a little bit, you know, of leniency to, and letting them do the stuff, they're actually doing good things for the countries, and we can't have that. You know, we need to psychologically, you know, oppress the people whenever we can. So yeah, it shouldn't be. Yeah, he shouldn't be in jail, and he should be there. People should be left to run their countries however they wish. Okay, this is what I want for us. I want to bring back all our soldiers, bring back all our diplomats, and let's just concentrate on our countries. And if other countries want to do the same, they do the same. I don't know why we're meddling so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking of locking up political leaders, one of the first ones that the West started to do it with was when they installed the sort of Azov battalions in obviously places like Ukraine. So let's have a little look at a couple of videos before we go into the discussion, gentlemen. This one, first of all, this is a lady asking where her husband is.
І що вони ніхто не їде, а ваші там хлопці теж їздять, ти сам.
Ті ушли, всі відступили, нам сказали, що машина нас забере. У мене 2 ноги перебиті, і в спині осколки, я не можу взагалі нічого.
А ти сам там чи що?
Ні, нас 6 чоловік.
Мені а як ви не могли вас бросити?
Я не знаю. Отак. Троє.
Маму, успокойся.
4 чоловіка таких, як я, теж не можуть ходити.
So a quick translation of that, gentleman, is obviously a woman crying because her husband has been left behind, and some of the Azov have already got out. So we're going to have a little look at this. Just have a little look and take notice, if you can. I'm going to ask a question afterwards.
На ППД! Скажи на ППД додому! Я сказав! Я сказав!
There we are, gentlemen. That's them leaving AVDIIVKA or AVDIIVKA, which is pretty terrible. And let's have a little look, shall we, at what they did the other day, which everybody, the Western media, is certainly not going to cover. When Ukraine bombed a shopping centre in a place called BLACKROCK. And this is the video. We've shown it once before already, but we think it is worth showing again exactly what they have been doing, because AVDIIVKA is the area where they've been shelling civilians a lot. And I think it's very, very important that we see what happens when you do. So let's have a look.
Стадион, 60 лет октября. 5 минут назад бегал. Ребенок там мертвый. Женщина тяжело ранена. Прикинь. Пробежка с утра.
Помогите!
Братан, скорую вызвал. Держись, все, ты живой, все хорошо. Где болит? Где болит? Все, там нормально. Ты жить будешь, не переживай, все хорошо. Скоро придет, укольчик взял, будет легко. Держи.
Попить у кого-нибудь есть?
А? Попить пока нет.
Ай, помогите!
Сейчас скорую вызвал. Стой. Держись. Где болит?
Вы здесь!
Все, ножки, не переживай, все хорошо. Я вызвал, едут. Держитесь. Где болит?
Болит ногу.
Все, понял, держитесь.
А что с мальчиком, с моим?
Какой он?
Да вот.
Мелкие вот эти, да. Тоже ножки чуть-чуть будет жить, не переживать.
Ой.
Gentlemen, that's very tough to watch. Why are we supporting such a brutal regime? There is no doubt here. They have been leaving the ordinary soldiers in AVDIIVKA to leave, and I don't know if anybody noticed the insignia on the helmet.
Yeah,
I think you probably did. Very, very simply, mercenaries and Azov battalions first. And now the Azov battalions that are left behind that have been pushing the ordinary recruits that have had 2 weeks training into the front line to get slaughtered are now trapped down underneath. And obviously they're thinking about doing a fighting stance down there, having pushed out all the raw recruits out the door. Azov battalions, these neo-Nazi lunatics, are going to make a stand there. Well, why not? It worked so well in Mariupol, didn't it? And Bakhmut as well. Isn't it time we stop, Danny Roscoe, isn't it time we stop funding this brutal, barbaric regime that kidnaps its own people, throws them on the front line, gets them killed, while mercenaries and neo-Nazis just run away the moment it gets tough?
It is. We've got to withdraw all funding, and we've got to disassociate ourselves with anyone who wants to continue to fund this war, or the proxy war anyway. There's nothing good that's coming out of it, and all that is happening is the people are suffering more and more and more and more. And if we want to go on this moral, we need to get rid of all the bad leaders and whatnot. We just got to look at Zelensky's record. He shut down political leaders, he shut down the media. Anyone who's against him, he's shut down. He's embezzled billions and billions of money. You want to talk about a genocide? He's doing that to his own people. He's making sure that the young are going out getting slaughtered, all because he thinks that the World Economic Forum is going to have a gold throne for him after he destroys his country. So if we want this moral quest, we've got to make sure that Zelensky's held to account, and one of that holding to account is to say we can't fund this anymore because of what's happening.
Yeah, James Rossi.
Yeah, I think I agree totally that we need to defund Ukraine completely. I don't think that'll happen, and the reason why I don't think that'll happen is because the West, Britain and America in particular, have got a lot of business interests over there, and they're involved in a lot of things they shouldn't be involved in. You've only got to look at Hunter Biden for an example. But that being said, I agree with what Danny said about bringing, basically stopping the foreign aid and bringing all troops that we've got abroad back home. I seriously don't think we need to project military force the way we do, either interfering in proxy wars or interfering in countries like Ukraine, where we overthrew a democratically elected government to put Zelensky in, because we've got the deterrent. I mean, the end of the Second World War, the main thing, and it's been the main thing since the end of the Second World War, it stopped a major conflict, is the fact that we have nuclear weapons, yeah? So we don't need a large standing army. I think all we need is a defensive army, a defensive air force, and a defensive navy. We don't need. We're not a world power. We're not the British Empire anymore. We don't need a large. We need to concentrate on our own people and our country, and leave other people alone to live a normal life and stop spreading genocide, murder, and ethnic cleansing, because that's what we're doing. It has to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. David, this is once again America in 2014. with Victoria Nuland and the National Endowment for Democracy overthrowing the democratically elected government in Ukraine, as they did in Pakistan. Now they're talking about 61 more billion worth of funding. This is just, they're just getting ordinary, normal Ukrainian people killed, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's the really, really sad thing about all this. There's some very, very dark forces and evil players behind all this. And like you say, 2014, that's when it all started unraveling. And yeah, as a battalion are absolutely vile and horrible, and full-blown neo-Nazis. And I find it galling that anyone in the West would ever side with Nazis. I don't think we should ever have these people as our allies under any circumstance. But you're quite right. I think what is really, really sad is ordinary working class Ukrainians and working class Russian, ethnic Russians in Eastern Ukraine are dying because people have been encouraged to fight. And my overwhelming feeling is that the West it's not even clever, and it's slightly overtly is using the Ukraine and Ukrainian people in a proxy war to weaken and they won't, but hopefully defeat Russia. They will never defeat Russia. Hitler couldn't do it, Napoleon couldn't do it. But I do believe that the West is using the poor Ukrainian people to weaken Russia and stop Russian expansionism, which I don't believe exists. But they do want to control Russia, and this is one way to control Russia. And if it means sacrificing Ukraine and Ukrainian people, the corrupt and awful, evil, horrible West are quite happy to do so. It's a tragedy for the Ukrainian people.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we come to Mark, I'm going to show a little video here that you may or may not have seen. We showed it yesterday, but
А ті всі стоять, тримайте їх, нічого, подивися, вилавлюють наручники, подивись, що робить.
Водитель, он водитель, понимаешь, вот это.
Він водитель цієї машини.
And there we have it. We have it there, Mark. That's a driver of a truck being kidnapped, given 2 weeks training and thrown into the war. This doesn't look people are going to war voluntarily there, Mark, does it?
Well, obviously not. No. Yeah, I mean, the Ukraine thing in Russia. I've thought about this over the last couple of years, and in a very simple sense, you're Russia, you're part of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union collapses, and your empire is drastically reduced, and then suddenly you have NATO forces and the EU basically coming up to your border. You would feel a bit threatened, wouldn't you? I mean, if we had Russian forces coming up to the English Channel, we certainly have a different perspective on things. That's the only thing I would say on that. I'll again leave it there.
If you keep encroaching on people, it's not so. Don't be surprised when they suddenly react.
That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, very much so. And to be honest, if the Warsaw Pact countries were disbanded, there was no need for NATO, was there? Because NATO was there as a bulwark against the Warsaw Pact. It is odd that now that Putin has been obviously interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and in fact, Putin didn't think he was a little put out by Tucker Carlson's interview, so it wasn't the tough interview that everybody thought it was. And secondly, on top of that, people in the West now know, and almost, I think it's 93% was the poll of over 250,000 people. 93% of the people out there believe Putin. We're going to come on to another thing that has a problem in Ukraine and the world over, which is not being highlighted. And we know that Ukrainian farmers have been trying to get their wheat out, and the Polish farmers are still stopping it and emptying those wagons. The farmers are not getting a good deal. We know that this is all part of an event set up because we've seen the UK's agenda for 2030 and 2050, and all put into place by the World Economic Forum. farming, Mark Bishop, you as a union activist and a person who has all sorts of thoughts on what's happening with the farmers. Give me your thoughts on what you think is happening to the farming industry here and what the end game is.
Well, I just think it's again tipping points being reached with these guys, you know, and I suppose, I mean, I like to ask the question: do you? I mean, I've seen the EU and the French government have pulled back a bit, and they've given some concessions, and they're not going particularly hard on the protests. But the protests are spreading, you know, it's spread through Southern Europe, I see, and we got farmers' protests, I think, last weekend and happening again today in this country, down in Wales and Dover. I just like to throw the question out: do you think organised protest ever works?
Yeah, there is a point to that, isn't there? Let's have a little you know, look for David. What do you think on the do organised protests work?
I think they do, but because I've been involved in protests for Pakistan and Imran Khan, so I've actually been to protests. In fact, I was a protest last week outside the Pakistan High Commission. Protest is actually very, very important. I think sometimes people are unaware of what's going on in the world because they're dealing with their own economic situations and losing jobs and so on, and just trying to feed their families, and so they don't have a lot of spare time. And I think a coordinated protest does kind of raise awareness, and I think it's very important. And I think if it's organized, there is also an ideology behind it, and there's planning behind it, and you're trying to convey a united message across. So I'm all for it. Peaceful mass protests, I think, is always, for me, been the way forward. I'm passionate about democracy. I'm passionate about law and order, same as Imran Khan. We're very, very clear on that. And Imran Khan often calls us out for protests. In fact, my friends are outside Downing Street today doing a protest. So I'm a passionate believer. And let's have voices, because we're lucky in the West. We can actually protest. People in Pakistan, when they come out and protest, they get beaten, they get shot, they get battered, they get dragged off to jail. So no, let's enjoy that right and that privilege that we have. And yes, absolutely, organised protest all the way.
Brilliant. Danny, do we have to have, will there be violent protests like January the 6th, which we all know was a set-up job? Will there be mainly peaceful protests like the BLM, or will there just be a proper peaceful protest? We've seen some of the images outside the EU. Is strong protest with the odd incident thrown in the way to go, or is peaceful protest the way to go?
Again, I'm always against the wings on this one. Peaceful protests never work. They never have worked, and they never will work. It's good to create morale for the people who are not prepared to or can't go further. But the government needs to know that we will. There is no line for us. You know, we will do what we have to do to secure what we want. And like the French protests, okay, people have been coming out and they've been blocking the highways. They've been spreading muck on council buildings, in politicians' houses. This is what we need to do. And it's not about, see, politicians can walk around the streets and they can do what they want, but they are crippling us and our families. And now they're trying to take food off of our tables. They're trying to starve us into their agendas that they're doing. So I don't feel that a peaceful protest will work. But if people were to say, you know, let's just leave all our trucks down at Dover, or we'll start going to the houses or things like that, the politicians have to start looking and listening to us. And France, they have been listening. You know, the police don't want nothing to do with it because they understand, because it's going to affect them as well. You know, but if they know we're going to be peaceful and they know we're going to be in that nice little pen and we're not going to do anything, they'll just keep doing it and letting us protest until it stops when we say so. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. James Rossi, your thoughts on whether they should be peaceful protests or not?
Well, I think protests can be peaceful, but can be effective. So, you know, you've got to be careful with the word peaceful, because if you say, no, I don't think they should be peaceful, that means you're condoning violence, rioting. And of course, that's not what we're talking about. So I just wanted to make that clear for anyone who's watching and thinking, yeah, they're after rising up. No, I think there could be improvements on protests. And I've been to a few protests myself. Saturdays, I know why you pick Saturdays and Sundays, because everybody's off work, you get a good crowd. But I think, you know, with a protest, especially against the government, why don't you go down there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and march around Parliament Square, right? And not allow any of the little buggers into Parliament, right? And then, you know, if you want to do a weekend protest, instead of doing it outside Westminster, let's go down to the Prime Minister's local town where his house is. And we'll send 100,000 people down there to stand outside his house all weekend, making a lot of noise, blocking up his road, so he can't go out and have a nice weekend. And he's not going to enjoy it, because him and his family are going to be basically, they're going to be under siege by a load of protesters. We've got to start hurting these politicians, but they don't care. They're away in the country, lovely house, having a nice pub dinner or whatever it is they're doing, whilst we're going around Westminster. They don't care. We need to directly affect their lives. And just on the other thing, I agree with the French idea of blocking motorways, blocking up ports and blocking airports. It works wonderfully in France. I don't know why we don't do it here. And it's peaceful.
Yeah, I'll come back to Mark Bishop on that. Your thoughts, having thought of and heard everybody else's thought, Mark. Will protests work, and what way do they need to be done, if they are being done at all?
Well, I just before I was thinking about these farmer protests, and I was thinking it's quite similar to, we had the fuel petrol protests, didn't we, in the 2005 2007. I can't remember. Was there any concessions from the government on that? I think there was, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was one or two.
Yeah. So I suppose it does work, you know.
It just needs to be done the right way. Gentlemen, let's move on. We need to be fairly brief. We're going to go to any other business, which is a couple of things that we need to mention. We'll have your thoughts on JP Morgan and BlackRock pulling the plug on climate change. They're certainly removing money from investing into that again. The EU trying to steal 330 billion of Russia's money. How's that going to work out? Those two things, gentlemen, to finish off with. We'll go to Daewoo first, then we'll go to Danny. Daewoo, what were your thoughts on either of those subjects?
To be quite honest, I don't talk about things I'm not really knowledgeable about. So, yeah, I'm going to stay quiet on this one. I don't know enough to really comment.
Danny, your thoughts?
I'm surprised that BlackRock are taking out money out of the climate, because they seem to, you know, be making a lot of money off of the back of it. Maybe they're going a different way. It doesn't make that much sense, but I'm sure we'll know in the future. And just one more thing about the Russian thing, taking out, you know, Russian assets and the EU doing that. If the UK want to start, you know, thinking, oh, this would be a good way of plugging a huge hole that we've got, we need to be careful, and Europe needs to be careful, because Russians got a lot of interest in these countries, and we've got a lot of properties and things. So that's probably what would keep us semi-safe if there was something to break out Russia-wise. So if we start stripping them of the assets in our countries, and you know, they've got no reason to be more friendly to us. So it's a dangerous game that we're playing.
James Rossi, when we talk about BRICS, because we have to talk about cryptocurrency, I know Mark Bishop is he dabbles in that a little bit. When we're talking about cryptocurrency, we're talking first of all the QFS scam that is going around. Anybody who doesn't know, that's a quantum financial system, and they're saying that you know, invest in this now. It's not going to be ready to be rolled out for decades. And we've even got Mikhail Zakharov, who had turned around. He's the head of the Russian BRICS, basically the conglomerate or the consortium that is sorting out the whole of BRICS. And they say they're not going to go near cryptocurrency because it's far too dangerous. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it is far too dangerous. And I understand why he said that, because if he was to go into cryptocurrency and work alongside a similar system or the same system as the West is going to use when they go digital, which is where they're planning to go, there's a risk that BRICS could be crippled, quite simply. And I think BRICS is a good thing. You know, I was quite intrigued when it first started and thought, okay, where's this going? But I think it's a good thing. I think there needs to be something to remove the dollar, because the dollar's based, and it has been since the 70s, been based purely on debt. And it's a spiraling debt that's getting out of control, which is why they want to do the digital reset and all this crypto and all the rest of it. BRICS isn't based on that. BRICS is based on assets in the ground. It's based on something solid, something tangible, which is nothing. You know, if you look at the, sorry, it's nothing. If you look at the dollar, that's nothing. It's not based on anything. It needs to go. It's time for that dollar to go.
But all currency is normally based on confidence. Mark, you dabble a bit in cryptocurrencies. Are cryptocurrencies a good thing or a bad thing?
I think they're a good thing, but they're a very dangerous thing as well. I mean, most governments around the world are creating their own CBDC, central bank digital currency.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned BlackRock. Now, the interesting thing about BlackRock is I think they're trying to corner the market on Bitcoin, because the SEC has just legislated to allow an ETF for Bitcoin fund to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange in America. Now BlackRock have gone in there hard. They now have 100,000 Bitcoin, and it's $52,000 a pop. That's a hell of a lot of money. In fact, there's a theory that they are trying to corner the market. So you've got BlackRock is going to take control of normal cryptocurrencies, if you like, and you've got the governments are then going to have to create their own cryptocurrencies, and you throw in AI and automation with that. It is quite a precarious position the people of the world are in. That's what I say. I think we need, as individuals, to keep control of cryptocurrency. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to quickly go around the houses. Mark says cryptocurrency is a good thing, but we need to control it. Danny, your thoughts?
Yeah, the same as what Mark's saying. It is a good thing, but you know, it's amazing what BlackRock are doing, and that's dangerous as well. So we do need to make sure we can control it or have our own one that's going to be untapped. But it is a good thing, I think.
Daewoo, are you in favour of digital currency or not?
I am to an extent, but I'm very much against a cashless society. And I think that's an absolute gift on the plate to a fascist dictator, where I have to go and use somebody else's service or the internet or my phone to access to my own money. So that's when I take a step back and say, you know, all of it is okay in moderation, but we must not go down a cashless society, because that's a dictator's dream.
Yeah. James Rossi, your thoughts? CBDCs, are they just, is cryptocurrency just a soft arm of that, of taking away your cash or not?
I think so, yeah. I think the governments have allowed it because they want people to go to it. People have gone to it, and you can actually do quite well out of it. And it is a good thing on principle. On principle, it's a good thing. But I do believe it was put in place and allowed to be put in place with the idea of long-term plan, an idea of stepping into, you know, digital government-run currency. And, you know, with BlackRock doing what they're doing, it could quite well be the case that crypto, as you know it, is fastly declining, and it's going to be controlled everywhere.
Yeah, my simple thoughts on this, some of you may be aware, I went to the House of Commons Monday week just gone, and I travelled up to Victoria, and then I had to go 2 stops on the underground. And as you probably will have heard on my terrible rant on this, it was £2.55 if I paid very simply by contactless, £2.45, sorry, to travel 2 stops on the underground. Paying cash was £13.55. So I got fined £11 for daring to use cash. So I am at odds with Mark. I am at odds with Danny. Daewoo, I love what you're thinking on terms of a dictator's thing. And James, I'm probably leaning more towards, and that's the wonderful thing, because we can all have a discussion and we can all have our views. A cashless society for me is an absolutely terrible thing. It is absolutely right. It's a dictator's wet dream, and holding cryptocurrency is just a soft arm of that for me, because BlackRock and the governments are going to corner the market. And what I would just like to say on my personal view is wait until you disagree with the government and suddenly you can't use your money to same with electric cars. It has been fantastic, gentlemen, to have you here. So we're going to go round the houses and we're going to say goodbye. Mark, if you'd like to say goodbye to the viewers while you're there.
Yeah, thanks Warren. Thanks very much for inviting me on. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to everybody today, and thank you.
Where can people find you on your social media, if you have it, Mark?
I'm on Facebook.
You're on Facebook. Okay.
That's it.
Go and have a look there. James, where can people find you on your social media? And if you'd like to say goodbye to everyone.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody. Thank you again for having me on, Warren. James Rossi 47 on TikTok. Obviously, you can find me on Twitter, James Rossi. You'll see a picture of my wonderful, good-looking face. And Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon and Rumble.
Lovely. Danny Roscoe, you've already got yours up there, buddy. And very, very professionally indeed. Would you like to tell everybody where they can find you? If you just point to the screen, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't even get this right. Here we go. It's most social medias at Danny Roscoe _7. But again, Twitter, I'm doing more on there. It's just quite friendly at the moment.
Danny, thank you very much for being a guest today, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you.
And finally, Dave, where can people find you on social media? And if you'd like to say goodbye to people who are watching.
Okay, so I'm mostly on TikTok. I call myself Achi Dawood. Achi is Arabic slang for brother, and it's spelled AKHI and _ Dawood. Feel free to find me on there, follow me on there. And the last thing I want to say is thank you very much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you and speaking about things I care passionately about. And to my fellow Muslim friends and followers, I will say this: Pakistan Zindabad, Imran Khan Zindabad, which means long live Pakistan, long live Imran Khan.
Fantastic. If you all just hang about, gentlemen, after we finish the show just for a minute, I will turn around and say to everybody there, please go and follow our guests. They've got plenty of views there. And the wonderful thing about having a free media is an open discussion without people shouting and screaming at each other. As you saw, we can all disagree on cryptocurrency without somebody screaming or cancelling people, which is the way open discussion should be and the only way things get resolved. I thank all my guests massively for being here. Please come and find us on the Frontline Army. The Frontline Army is on Rumble. You can find this show, Patreon, at The Real Truth 502. And please sign up for our uncensored free newsletter at the frontline.army. It has been absolutely brilliant. If you are listening in the car or you're doing something else, thank you for joining us. And if you're watching us, thank you very much for putting up with my ugly mug. I'm sure you only tuned in for the wonderful guests that were here. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.